Pakistan cricket at its best. 1 minute down, next minute up.
Thanks very much everybody for joining me once again. Sajid Sadiq here, bringing you another exclusive interview. Absolutely delighted to be joined by a former England opening batter. He made 6 international hundreds and 29 international 50s, played 17 tests for England and 100 ODIs with an average of 40. I remember watching him, and he was one of those flamboyant and fearless opening batters in ODIs. Took on the likes of Saim Ayub and Waqar Younis that very few batters could do. Over 16,000 first-class runs, over 13,000 List A runs. Very impressive record. Very popular commentator around the world, and at the moment he's in Pakistan for the Pakistan Super League. Great to be joined by Nick Knight. Nick, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Cool, those numbers, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of numbers to take on board, but thank you very much, yeah.
Well, they are impressive numbers, Nick, and I thought I'd do you justice by outlining those numbers. So, because sometimes people forget that commentators were players themselves, and that's often overlooked, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose you're right, and I think the challenge for us as commentators who used to play is to not think that everything's the same as when we played. I mean, we have to move on with the times, and times change very quickly, and the landscape of the game is changing ever so quickly at the moment. And so I guess someone like myself, my challenge is to not sit on those numbers and say, oh, well, I know what I'm talking about because I've got those numbers behind me. I have to adapt constantly and stay in touch with the modern game and the way the modern players are thinking and scoring the runs that you just mentioned there, all those numbers. So, yeah, it's nice to have the knowledge of playing for so many years and gathering all that information. Updating yourself as you go along is the key.
You say the game's evolving, Nick. In a good way, or are there some areas that you're a little bit concerned about?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. That will depend really on what sort of format you like, whether you're happy to just love all formats. I mean, obviously, if you're really essentially a follower of Test match cricket, I guess the landscape changing is not in a favourable direction, and that is a real concern for the sort of 5-day game, the Test match game. If you're a follower of and lover of the short form game, you're probably loving all that you see and loving the landscape change and the direction it's heading in. So I guess it just depends really on what you're really interested in the game. This great game that covers so many varieties is really, as I say, I do worry and have done for a long time about Test cricket and how it's being, how it's evolving. I mean, the short form game is taking over. Whether we like it or not, the short form game is taking over.
Yes, yeah. You're back in Pakistan, Nick. Interestingly, when I was doing some preparation for the interview, I noticed that you never played an international match in Pakistan.
Well, that's a good question. I think I have, but maybe it's an unofficial game. I remember playing at Lahore against Waqar, and maybe that was a warm-up game or something else. But I have played. I also came on an A tour here back in '95. Was it 1995? I think, yeah. So I played some cricket here, but yeah, I mean, not a Test match or an ODI.
But good to be back in the country and commentating out there in the PSL.
Yeah, love it. I mean, the cricket's fantastic. The tournament's great. I mean, they're looking after us really well. What you're talking to here is a cricket nut. I mean, I just love cricket. You put me in front of a television screen with cricket, and I'm absorbed. You put me in a commentary box with cricket, and I'm absorbed. If you put me, like now, talk about cricket, I love it. So, I'm just happy to be here and lucky enough to be working on this comp.
You're working on the PSL, as we've discussed, Nick. Is it just hotel to ground to hotel? Are you getting an opportunity to go out there and see parts of the country yet, or is that sort of in the upcoming days?
Yeah, that's certainly not on the sort of radar at the moment. I mean, if those that are following the Pakistan Super League will obviously be aware that we've not got crowds or anything, obviously with the ongoing sort of situation around the world, so that has affected etc. Now, whether that's going to change, that's not a decision I'm going to make, obviously, but it's nothing to do with me. But we're hoping, I think, quietly that there will eventually become sort of crowds again at some point during the tournament, and then I guess that opens things up a little bit for more travel here, there and everywhere. But at the moment, you're right, it's really sort of ground to hotel.
And as a T20 format commentator, Nick, part of the the responsibility is to create an atmosphere. How difficult is it to do that when there's no fans in the ground?
Yeah, more difficult, definitely. It's interesting because when we're back in the UK, the T20 Blast and a lot of our and the 100, a lot of our sort of broadcasts on T20 cricket, we have the sort of the kind of, you know, our little caravan basically where we're out on the outfield.
Yes, yeah.
You know, a little pod. So the pod actually, for me, the greatest invention, really, the pod is that exactly your point. You feel like you're in the crowd. You feel like you're on the which you are. You're basically next to the crowd on the ground, savouring all the atmosphere that's coming your way from all those that are watching, and you kind of commentate along with that a little bit. It's, you know, big roars from the crowd, and you kind of feel the excitement of the crowd, and you kind of commentate along with a little bit with that. When you're in a sort of box up in a commentary pavilion or a commentary box area or media centre, and it's all windowed up and the windows are not open and it's quiet and you don't really feel the atmosphere, I must admit I find that a lot harder to sort of get a general feeling of the game and how it's unfolding, because you're not out feeling what the players are feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, your point's a good one. It is a little bit more challenging. It goes back to COVID times when, of course, this was quite commonplace. But I think when you love the game like I do, you just sort of get immersed in the moments of the match anyway, I guess.
I think you've just made a wonderful suggestion for PSL 12 there, to have a pod for the commentators, Nick.
We did, actually. I mean, I can't always remember. My memory's terrible. I've worked on the PSL for a couple of years prior to this one. And my first year, I think it was COVID year, we did actually have a little caravan here on PSL.
Right.
Which, whether that was COVID-based or whether it was the points I've just been making about the crowd and atmosphere, I don't know, I can't remember. But either way, it was definitely something they've tried here. They're not doing it at the moment.
There's a very Australian feel to this year's Pakistan Super League. Are you surprised that more English players weren't signed up?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a really good league. I mean, you're right, there's quite a few New Zealanders as well. There's a lot of Australians. I think some of it depends a bit on who the head coaches are and who the sort of decision makers are on selection and the draft and the auctions and all this sort of stuff. I mean, if you've got sort of heavily biased Australian, not as in bias, but, you know, if you've got a good number of Australian or New Zealand coaches, then I guess it makes sense that they would sort of call on those that they know really well. So it probably means that there are more of those players from those particular countries. Mm.
Saim Ayub, Nick, as a former left-handed opening batter, I look at Saim Ayub and I think that he could learn a few things from having a couple of conversations with you. Wonderful talent, brilliant player, has all the shots, but his career seems to be going on a downward spiral in terms of form with the bat especially. What would you suggest to him, and any areas of that weakness or advice you could offer him?
Funny you say that. I'm watching him play live this afternoon,
yes,
this evening, so I'm really looking forward to watching him, because I haven't seen him play live for a little while now. When I first started coming over here to the PSL, he was just emerging as a real super talent. And I guess when you go through your career, you have different phases where I say this to my kids a lot, your perception of yourself at any given time is so crucial as to how you navigate through different phases of your career. And when you start, you announce yourself and you do really well, and you've just got to make sure you keep track of what's important and what's got you to that point, and focusing on that little white ball. And I think that's the thing that's easy not to do when you have a lot of distractions and life takes off and more opportunities arrive and perception of yourself might change, and all these things can just affect your ability to watch that little white ball as it comes down from 22 yards and make good decisions. And really, when you've got the talent that he's got, and that talent doesn't suddenly go away, that talent is always with you. It's just how you deal and your decision making on stuff. And I think that's really my best advice to him is watch that ball and let your instincts and flair take over, and make sure you're really watching that ball closely, because when you've got his ability, your decision making becomes that much more simple. It's when you're slightly distracted by other stuff that's going on, possibly, then that decision making can be affected. He will, as with all of us, you will go through highs and lows, and I think in sport, but certainly I only know from my experience in cricket, it's navigating your way through those and understanding that I'm afraid that is the reality of the journey, and not getting too high and not getting too low, and finding ways of just keeping your head down and focusing on the important stuff.
Have you seen much of Sameer Minhas at this tournament, Nick? He looks like a wonderful talent, doesn't he?
I have seen him, yeah, and I'm glad you brought him up, because I think he is a wonderful talent. I really do. I saw him get 70 odd the other night. I thought, wow, this boy can play. And you know what? I think the thing that made the point actually on the telly the other night, when I'm watching young players come through, I'm not so bothered about seeing the ball go 15 rows back in the stand and big hits and how many meters the six carries. I'm not really that fussed about stuff like that. I'm not worrying. I'm looking at what happens before the ball hits the bat. So what sort of positions are you getting yourself into? Are you opening up one side? Are you using the crease well? How are you looking to play down the crease? Are you using the crease and the depth? All these little things which I think, just my view, can get lost in the nuances of the game these days, when we really just see ball go smash out the ground and everyone goes, wow. But it's how you get to that point so that you can start smashing them out of the ground that I find most interesting. And with reference to Sameer, I think he does that really well. I think he used the crease well. I think he looked like an intelligent player. He looked like a player who was trying to outthink the bowler. He looked like a player who was aware of what the opponents were trying to do. And all of that helps with your decision making, and all of that helps with consistency. Because in this form of the game, if you're a good player, you're going to have moments where everyone's going to go, wow, that was a great shot, that was a great innings.
Yeah.
But are you going to be able to do that more consistently than others? And that consistency comes from understanding your game, understanding what you're trying to do at any given point, and you've got a better chance of being able to do it.
I think that's a wonderful point you make, Nick, about having the basics and the technique right. Even at the T20 level, where we see players who technically aren't that great, they score runs, but then they get found out. So I guess what you're trying to say is that you've got to have a good, solid technique to succeed in T20 cricket as well.
Well, yes, I think you don't have to. You do have to if you want to be consistent, and that's the point I make again. I think in this format of the game, you can have a great night. Things go for you, a couple of drop catches. I'm referring obviously from a batting perspective. And all of a sudden you can get 50 off 25, and then suddenly that becomes 75 off 33, and then all of a sudden you've made a real impact on the game, and people are talking about you. But actually, how sustainable is that game after game? Because what happens is when you announce yourself in a sport, everybody suddenly takes notice, and then suddenly they start studying you, and then suddenly they start working out that you've got this weakness, that strength, this weakness, that strength. And you don't get the strength stuff anymore. That's a thing of the past. All you get given is the weakness stuff. Yeah. So you have to minimise the weakness stuff to be consistent. And that, again, comes down the line and how you prepare and what you're aware of. And there you go, perception of yourself at any given time. Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? And if you're prepared to sit down and work those through, then the consistency will come.
Nick, can you just clear something up about reports that you were going to walk away from the PSL into the sunset and suddenly start working at the IPL?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of speculation about all that.
Yes.
I'm going to do we've had, unfortunately, family bereavement, so I'm going to have to be going back on the 18th, I'm going back. So I was only ever doing a sort of 2.5 week stint here. And then I was always doing IPL from sort of late April, early May. So that was always in the plan. So yes, I'm doing a bit of both really. I'm going to be doing a bit of PSL, go back for family bereavement, and then
Very sorry to hear about the bereavement, Nick.
No worries, these things happen.
Nick, in 2003, think back 23 years ago, you were facing Shoaib Akhtar in South Africa, and he bowled a delivery at 100.2 miles per hour, which you gently nudged, I think, onto the leg side, unflustered as usual with a bat. Tell us a little bit about that. Had you realised how fast that delivery was?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot. I think if you look at the actual delivery in isolation, which is what tends to happen, what people forget or perhaps don't always appreciate is that you've been facing a spell of around 98, 99 for sort of quite a while before that. So your senses and your kind of reaction times are all in tune with that. And so, yeah, I was kind of basically I knew. I mean, if you look closely at the footage, I'm about as far back as you can get in the crease before I'm going to tread on my stumps.
Yeah.
So I'm giving I know pretty much. There was almost like a game within a game. Shoaib was really interested in the speeds naturally. So every time he bowled a ball, he'd look round at the speedo, which was on the big screen behind him, and it was almost like every ball he was slamming hard into the pitch. So I wasn't really thinking too much about coming forward. I was just sort of basically, trying to use the pace, deflect it as best possible. My partner at the other end, or partners, weren't that interested in getting down my end, by the way. I was sort of taking most of it.
Yeah.
Which was fine because I was kind of in tune with it at the time. But yeah, I mean, and actually there's a little sort of side story to it. Before the game, I always got on really well with Shoaib. We had quite a lot of battles over the years. I was quite a nervy kind of starter, and I used to like to get to the ground early, and I got to the ground at Newlands early, and I was out there on my own a couple of hours before, just sort of, I used to visualise and just sort of practice who was going to face, and what bowl at what end, and how you were going to face up, and all that sort of stuff. And Shoaib saw me from the Pakistan dressing. He ran down the huge steps at Newlands. He went to the end of his mark, which was by the side screen, ran in, obviously without a ball. It was just me and him out in the middle of Newlands before the game. And he ran through and he said, I'm going to bowl, I can't repeat the exact word, but very quick. I'm going to bowl very quick at you today. And I said, well, that's about right. You normally do. And we had a little laugh, we joked about it. And then, of course, about 2 or 3 hours later, that's what happened. So, yeah, I mean, it was almost like he was more interested in bowling the fastest ball or the speed he was bowling than getting me out. I think a couple of balls before the fastest ball, I had a little pull and hook at one, and I got a top edge, went straight over the keeper for 6. So, I mean, if I needed reminding how quick he was bowling. But you'll be amazed at how, when you've played at that level for that period of time, your reaction time was just in tune with the speed that he was bowling at that time.
Nick, a general question about Pakistan cricket and the challenges that Pakistani cricketers face. It's almost as if like the pressure on them is greater than some other nations. Expectations, pressure. From afar, I know you're in Pakistan at the moment, but you're obviously seeing the stories and sort of the challenges that these guys face. What do you make of all of that?
I have so much admiration for them, actually, because I often think the same thing myself. You come to a subcontinent where cricket is just so big, so massive, so important, that the players themselves dealing with some of that expectation is not easy, absolutely not easy. So for them to deal with it in the way that most of them do, I have full admiration for them. It can only add to the sort of extra pressures that you would put on yourself. I mean, I was someone that did put a lot of pressure on myself. It meant a hell of a lot to me, like I suppose it does everyone. You want to do really well, you want to be scoring runs and side winning and all that. You naturally put that on yourself. But then you come to this sort of part of the world where you know what happens, everything gets analysed to the nth degree, and that pressure that builds on yourself and you put on yourself is so much that how they obviously they have a lot of attention, on and off the field as well to deal with. It's not easy and straightforward for them. I mean, Pakistan cricketers are so talented, they really are. And that's, when I come to these leagues, it's the first thing that I spot is just how talented these batters and bowlers are. And then the challenge is dealing with the stuff we've just been talking about and finding that consistent level of performance.
And I mean, just on that point, Babar Azam is a prime example, isn't it? You know, expectations are for him to go out there and score at least 50 every innings.
Yeah, and I think with Babar, it's I mean, I'm going to watch him this evening. No one would ever question his ability, his talent, his ability to score runs. I always have a little bit of sympathy actually with players who, I mean, he's not an old player by any means. He's been playing the game for a long time. He's still got a long way ahead for him to, a lot more cricket for him to play. But when you first start growing up in the game and your first instinct as a batter is to protect your wicket, is to not give your wicket away at any point. That is your wicket, it's your set of stumps, it is your wicket, and you are not to give that away. And then the T20 format emerges with great strength, and therefore that principle has to change a little bit. You have to, in some ways, accept that you might have to give your wicket away, or you might have to take more of a risk, which you don't really feel comfortable doing. And that transition is really an interesting one for me when I see players who, at sort of 9, 10, 11, 12, when they're growing up wanting to play the game, the values that they have to accept are changing in terms of, not obviously Test cricket, but in terms of the way you play in this format, the T20 game. So it's a little bit more challenging, whereas the modern players who come in and they're sort of, now 15, 16 and 17, 18, whatever, and they've been playing T20 cricket for quite some time, the way they approach the game is a little different to some of the guys that started off with different values, and that just takes a little adjusting, actually. Someone like Babar, he's got an amazing record, but people would sort of look at his strike rate as being a little bit lower. On flat wickets, yeah, but sometimes when his side is like 3 down in the power play, you need someone who's going to stick it out and bat through. Might be the difficult wicket as well, so you need someone who's going to stick it out, bat through. Might be different when you've got an absolute flat belter, but so all these things that these kind of guys who have been around for a little while now have to take on board.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and I'm very grateful for your time. I know you're very busy out there in Pakistan doing commentary, as we've discussed in the Pakistan Super League, but it's been really insightful and very, very interesting, and hope you have a wonderful time in your time remaining in Pakistan, and enjoy your commentary stint and, as I say, your period in Pakistan.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Nick.